Welcome back to Creating Cooperative Kids. I'm your host, Bill Corbett. If you're just joining us, regular viewers know that I use this last segment to answer viewer questions that come into my email box. Now, to send me your parenting questions, simply send an email to questions@cooperativekids.com, and perhaps I'll select yours on a future episode. First, let me introduce my panel of guests who will help me answer today's question. Dr. Susan Markell is a board-certified pediatrician and author of the book, What Your Pediatrician Doesn't Know Can Hurt Your Child. Julie Rosenshine is a licensed psychotherapist and the author of the book, Parenting the Highly Sensitive Child. Now, I've asked my guests for today's show to come back on the set to help me answer this question from a viewer. The parent writes, I know that spanking my child is not good, but what can I do instead? So that's a big question I get from parents. So one of the things I just want to lay out there right now is I think a lot of parents don't want to spank, but they end up spanking out of frustration. They get frustrated with their child's behavior because they don't have enough tools in the toolbox. And I think that's why, in human nature, why do we respond in inappropriate ways? Because we don't have the education, the knowledge, enough tools. And so I always tell parents, we're walking around with an imaginary toolbox. And in that box are usually all the things that our parents gave us when we were growing up. And I tell them, you know, again, our parents did what they felt they had to do. That was a different day. It was a different time. This is a different age. We have to modernize, and we have to help parents, parent educators like us, come up with different tools where they have a sensitive child, where they have a difficult home life. They've got to come up with some different tools because spanking actually can be very destructive. And as we know today, we now have agencies that we didn't have when we were kids. Department of Children and Families is closely watching families across the country. So even more of a reason why we've got to use other tools. So in answering this parent's question, I first want to let her know that you're not alone. You know, parents struggle, adults struggle with kids because, as I said in another segment, we have to do more with less. There's so much stress on adults today, and yet we still have to be parents. You know, somehow we have to fit that in. And that's why I tell parents, try to be a little bit more humble. Don't be too proud. Go to a parenting class. Read a parenting book and get some help, some tips that you possibly can. But it all starts in here. If we find ourselves snapping and yelling, sometimes we need to examine what's going on with us. So what I want to do is kind of throw that question at you. What comes to mind for each of you when you hear the parent asking that question as experts?
What comes to mind for me is that so many times, despite the mental awareness of loving our children, we act in ways that don't display that love because of the reasons that you just discussed. That when a parent has problems within themselves, the child's behavior can just tip that parent over into thinking, I'm just too upset, I'm too frustrated, and take out the parent's frustration or disappointment or anger on the child, even though the child is not really the cause of the anger or the frustration in the first place. And I also think that, as you know, as you said in the first segment, my chapter on discipline is called Treat Me Like I'm Someone You Love. But I also would say to parents, treat your child the way you treat your colleagues at work, the way that you would treat a policeman who stops you for speeding. I mean, there's no other situation in the world, in our society, where it's appropriate to start hitting somebody else, except when a parent has the power and the might and the size to hit an innocent child.
What psychologists have been telling us for years, and a lot of it is in the parenting books, some of it's written by pediatricians, is children come into the world, they're little explorers. They want to figure out how to push buttons, how to make shiny things happen. They want to play. They want to know where they fit in. Adlerian theory is one of my favorite theories because Adler, back in 1900, said children just want to belong. And the sooner that we help them fit in, the sooner they're going to behave in unison with what we want them to do. So it's all about trying to help parents see life through the child's eyes, and that is so hard to do because all we can do is look through our eyes. Julie?
I would say if a parent is feeling the need to spank, that the problem happened 6 problems ago. In other words, now you're in a power struggle with the child, but 6 steps along the way before that had to happen that were more proactive than just getting to the place where you want to lash out at your child. And I would say back it up. to those other things that weren't happening before. You know, natural consequences, checking your own emotional regulation, calming yourself down, checking in with yourself. Why is this getting to such a place where it's out of control? Because you've already lost the battle if you're in a power struggle where you need to hit. And that child's going to become older and stronger. And if you don't learn as they're younger how to lay the foundation work for natural consequences and how to really help your child understand what's going on, it's going to be a real problem much later on.
I'm always telling parents, you know, if you find yourself getting to that point, and if I can get you to believe that spanking is not the right choice, here's what you can do. And you touched on it. You got to take a break. Because what we found through human nature is when we take a break and come back, it looks completely different. And the best thing to do is I give parents permission to be angry in front of the child and go, Mommy is taking a break. Mm-hmm. And if you know, even if you have to express that way, and then when you do that, just go somewhere for 5 minutes. In fact, I teach parents that you should have your own timeout. I wrote about in my book, you should have your own timeout before designing one for your child. And when we take a time out and go away, breathe deeply. The brain, we don't realize how much oxygen the brain is not getting in an everyday pace for parents. And if that brain is not getting enough oxygen supply, doctors, you probably know, it shuts down the operation of the neural pathways to be able to figure out what am I supposed to do. So just a simple thing as walking away, and then breathing deeply and coming back, and in that short moment, things can actually look different for parents. Would you agree?
Right. I don't actually talk about spanking in the book because it's so far out of the realm of my experience as a parent or as a pediatrician, although I know that it occurs, but I do talk about yelling. And I talk about how when a parent is out of control and they resort to what they were taught as a child, which is yell. As a parent who's frustrated will yell, but yelling frightens children. And children who are yelled at are frightened to see their own parent out of control. And the child who is yelled at or spanked feels defensive and feels defenseless and feels helpless and wants to run away.
I would even piggyback on that and add that there's a certain technique that I call the seesaw technique, and the more reactivity there is in the situation, the less reactive the parent needs to get. Because if you're getting more reactive, the situation is going to climb and escalate. But just as you mentioned earlier in your show, when the reactivity comes down, and the parent's able to even speak in a tone that a child can hear, that's when real communication can happen. I would much rather see a parent say, right now what you're doing, I am just feeling so angry and out of control. I want to find a solution for this, but I think we might even need to take a few seconds from each other.
Now, the interesting thing is what researchers have discovered is even though the umbilical cord was cut years ago, it's still connected. Mm-hmm. We just can't see it. There's a spiritual connection between parent and child. In fact, if the parent is all worked up because they're stressed out and they have to answer all these messages and it transmits down that invisible line, and then suddenly the child is acting out. The child is punching his brother or won't get in the car seat or won't get dressed. And what we've missed is that a lot of the child's behavior starts here in the parent. And it's if we can just teach parents that we are the center, and you have the power. If you change your disposition, the disposition in your own child may change as well, right?
Especially with highly sensitive children, they know what you're feeling anyway. They're going to pick up on all of those feelings. So it really behooves us to get a grip on what is triggering us to feel so out of control and get so escalated.
So we understand the triggers and stuff. We've only got about a minute left, but what are some things we can quickly offer parents that they can do instead of spanking? I mean, you had some thoughts. One of the things that I like to tell parents is think back. What are all the incidents? What were the triggers that caused you to want to spank the child? And then think backwards and go, what can I do to change that in advance, right?
I will often do a family guide or contract when I first work with parents and the family, that we have guidelines about what happens in our family, and we post it on the refrigerator for them. And so when somebody's either parent or child is out of those guidelines, we just go back to the refrigerator and we say, number 4 really looks like we're just missing number 4 completely.
And you can do that with young children as well.
Absolutely.
And it just means you don't have to write anything because they can't read, you know?
I've
So
had
draw
little
pictures.
4-year-olds say, "Mommy, remember number 2?" And so it keeps parents and children responsible for a calm body, a calm tone, and when they're really not able to do that, we can talk about what's happening that's making that situation so out of control.
And what you say is so important. We've got to set up agreements in advance. Take the time to set things up so a child knows what to do. What is life supposed to look like in their family? Right, Susan?
Exactly.
And any other last-minute comments on that?
Well, only that attacking words or attacking physically can never lead to a peaceful future. There's no possibility to end with peace when things are escalating in that kind of manner.
So I thank you so much for coming back on the show and addressing this. It's a tricky subject. And so all we want to do is offer parents, look at the situations that seem to get to the point where you feel like you're going to spank and come up with a different solution. Ask experts. There's experts all over the place that you can ask if you just reach out and say, how can I change the situation so I get a different outcome than the one that I'm getting? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
In today's show, we learned the proper technique for timeouts and what discipline looks like that is more in line with unconditional love. We learned how to raise a more sensitive child and alternatives to spanking. I hope you'll tune into future episodes of this program as I offer more tools to help you rebuild your parenting toolbox as an awesome parent or teacher. Now, if you're watching this on DVD or online and you'd like to get this on your local public access channel, contact my office to find out how. Making the world a better place to live begins at home as engaged, encouraged, and masterful parents. I'm Bill Corbett. I'll see you the next time on Creating Cooperative Kids.
I'll go to sleep with the lights off tonight, even though I'm scared of the dark. I can lick that thing under my bed with one hand. I know I can. In my heart, I'm gonna be big. I'm gonna reach real high. I'm gonna blaze a trail of my own across the sky. I just need some time and a little room. And someday I'll go walking on the moon. Someday